Sid, the big story today, no doubt about it. Lionel Messi will stay at Barcelona for that one remaining year. But it was the most extraordinary interview from Messi, who in the past, well known as saying pretty much nothing. But goodness me, he put it all on the table and more in this incredible chat.
Yeah, it really was. I think you're right. It was extraordinary to listen to it, not least, of course, because of the context. Now, the context is that when a player stays at a club, when a player is in a position that should be good news, that should be happy news, there was no sense whatsoever that this was a happy ending. There was no pretense that things were okay. There was no kind of, all right, let's draw a line under this and move on. Messi laid it out very, very clearly. I am only staying to avoid a court case against Barcelona. I wanted to go. They knew I wanted to go. I told them repeatedly I wanted to go. I had the right to go. I had the right to go for free. I don't know what happens now. It was just extraordinary. And I was thinking about this earlier on, and you know, you talk about the way that sometimes when there's a problem and people make up and everyone kind of makes a very concerted effort to make things better. Now, obviously, once Messi starts playing, he's competitive enough, he's serious enough, he's committed enough, and he wants to win enough that he will probably perform very, very well. But there was no attempt whatsoever, was there, to seek a reconciliation today. This was him saying very, very bluntly, incredibly brutal, the truth that he delivered, which is say, I'm here because they wouldn't let me go.
And the key to this whole thing, and it's something we've discussed, of course, a lot over the last couple of weeks, was the fact that Bartomeu apparently told him at the end of the season it would be his decision whether or not he wanted to stay or go. He then, of course, told him he wanted to go, and Bartomeu went, hey, no way, you've got a contract for another year here.
Yeah, and of course the legal argument there was an argument about a clause that means that at the end of each year, this is the contract that Messi signed in 2017, at the end of each season, he could inform Barcelona of his desire to leave and walk away for free. The problem was that he had to do that before the 10th of June. We believe there was a window of opportunity, which was the 31st of May to the 10th of June every year. And of course, this year, he didn't do it. Now, there was a legal argument there, which was Messi saying that we can't possibly be in a position in which I have to inform you of this on the 10th of June, when on the 10th of June, we're still playing in competition. You know, we're still competing. I'm not going to tell you then. It has to be at the end of the season. And so there was an argument basically about the letter of the law, 10th of June according to the contract, and the spirit of the law, the spirit being this is supposed to be a 10-day period of grace at the end of a season. Barcelona weren't going to back down, Messi wasn't going to back down, so one way of resolving that, of course, is to challenge it legally and go through the courts. But Messi's position on this was not legally watertight enough to be able to risk this. He wasn't going to put himself in that position, and he wasn't going to put any potential buyers in that position, and he wasn't going to end up in court with Barcelona, and that is why this has broken down. And it was extraordinary listening to Messi this evening, because he didn't just say, look, I felt that it was right to be able to go. He didn't just say, the club said, sorry, you didn't announce it before the 10th of June and therefore you can't. He actually added to it. He said, I've been telling them all season. They've been saying to me all season, it's okay, just not now. Let's talk about this at the end. But yes, of course you can walk away. Let's talk about this at the end of the season. And of course, the end of the season was past that 10th of June deadline. And at that point, Barcelona decided they weren't going to be flexible at all. They have forced him to stay. This is the greatest player in their entire history. This is their captain, and he's staying not because he wants to, but because he has absolutely no choice but to do so.
That 10-day window, Sid, why didn't he exercise the opportunity then?
Well, look, I think there are two very clear reasons. One is the one that he offered this evening, and he did address this directly. He said, look, on the 10th of June, we were still playing La Liga. We were still competing. Why would I do it before the end of the season? And I think he's entitled to say that, not least because he'd been given the insurances by the club. Look, don't worry, at the end of the season, we can talk about this. Let's just not do it now. And I must admit there's a bit of me that thinks that there's another element as well. Now, how much this was a direct influence on this, but I'm sure it would have been part of this. Bear in mind that Messi's exit strategy here, which comes, of course, post the 8-2 defeat, and I'm sure that could well have been the final straw, the one that finally made him say, yeah, this feeling I've had all year that I want to go, I've absolutely got to. But not only did he have to wait for that 8-2, but also, of course, on the 10th of June, his exit strategy is Manchester City. On the 10th of June, Manchester City were not going to be playing Champions League football next season, or indeed the season after.
How is Bartomeu still president, Sid?
He's a survivor. He's a survivor, and it's curious, isn't it? Because in a way, this is a huge victory. This is a huge victory for him, but I think it's a very hollow victory. I think it's a very empty victory. Shall I give you a good example of how this has been received, Dan? It is now, I'm looking at my watch, what is it, 3.5 hours nearly since this was announced that Messi is staying. Lionel Messi stays at Barcelona is the biggest piece of news in the club's entire history. Do you know what the lead story on Barcelona's website is right now? It's Coutinho goes to pre-season training with Barcelona. So even something like this, because of the way this has been kind of played out, because of the feeling that this isn't really a victory for anyone, this doesn't feel right in any meaningful way, it's not even the lead story on Barcelona's website right now. And I don't know about you, but I think that's really quite sad. How is Bartomeu still there? Well, because he's a survivor, because he keeps finding ways through, because he's resolved this conflict in the short term. But the truth is he hasn't resolved anything. He just managed to, if you like, kind of paper over the cracks. And actually, if you listen to that Messi interview, here's one way of looking at it. Messi says there's been no real plan, there's been no real project, they've been balancing things and just kind of papering over the cracks. His phrase really was fill in the holes as they go along. And when you think about it, that's ultimately what they've done with Messi's future as well. It's to take short-term decisions based on how do we kick the can down the road? How do we put this crisis off for the time being and let it be someone else's problem? Bartomeu will be gone in a year's time. Messi will still be there.
Now, that's an interesting point, Sid, because we're talking about this, that he's got this one more year and then he's free to leave. But in theory, with Bartomeu gone and Xavi coming in, whoever the new president will be and whoever the new manager will be, it's not necessarily a given that Messi will go at the end of next season. Is that fair?
Well, I think it is fair, not least because there was no mention of this in the interview. There was no mention of a promise to stay beyond this year, but nor was there any mention of, I'll see out my contract and this time I really will walk away. Because, of course, he doesn't know what kind of condition the club is going to be in by the end of next season, when Bartomeu is gone, when there's a new president and so on. But there is one really big issue here. Presidential elections will be on the first available date, in theory. The first available date after the 15th of March. Messi can start talking to other clubs formally and officially and openly from the 1st of January. Does he wait 3.5 months before he starts doing that? Does he put an agreement into place? Does he make that decision before Bartomeu goes, or does he try and hang on? And if so, if he tries to hang on and tries to wait, does he find that his options are more limited? I honestly don't know how he will manage that. Right now, of course, and particularly given the way that he spoke this evening, you would say, yeah, of course he'll walk away. Absolutely he will. But you're quite right. The man that he blames more than any other, and that's not to say Bartomeu is the only man responsible, will be gone by the end of next season. So perhaps that changes his mindset.
Right then, let's talk about the football side of things, shall we? Daft question this is, clearly, given he's the best player in the world. Is this a good thing for Ronald Koeman?
I don't think it is a daft question, Dan. I'm not convinced it is a good thing for Ronald Koeman. Now, obviously, look, on the face of it, let's embrace that idea of it being a daft question. Yeah, this is the best player in the world. You want him in your team. And Ronald Koeman, when he arrived, said, I want the best player in the world to be on my team. I don't want him to be playing for someone else. And yet, Koeman also said, I only want players who want to be here. And players who are going to give everything. Now, Messi, I think, is competitive enough that he will give everything. And I think he will ultimately play, and probably play quite well this season. But also, seen purely from Koeman's point of view, in terms of the expectations, in terms of the pressure on him, in terms of his desire to build something new, there is a little bit of me that thinks that would be possibly easier done without Messi than with Messi. Messi conditions everything you do. Now, obviously, being conditioned by possibly the best player ever is a very, very good thing. But I think Koeman had already started to contemplate other structures, other mechanisms, other ways of making this work. For example, making a promise to Antoine Griezmann that he was going to play a key role. Well, does that still happen with Messi there? Does the role of Dembélé change? Does the role of Ansu Fati change? Does the way that he constructs his midfield change? Does he have to alter all of the pieces around Messi? Now, of course, he would have been thinking this through, thinking that there was still a chance that Messi was going to stay, not least because I'm sure the president would have been saying to him, I'm not going to let this guy go. But I must confess, I think in terms of the pressure on him, in terms of the freedom to do what he wants, in terms of the structure and the identity of his team, and also, by the way, any sense of a long-term plan, because obviously this is Messi in theory for only 1 year, any sense of a long-term plan, this is problematic for Koeman. Now, big caveat alert, it's likely that Koeman only lasts a year as well, so perhaps he hasn't quite got onto that stage of the thinking process just yet.
Sid, I've been perusing the Barcelona website and the top story is Coutinho's return. So you've got Coutinho, you've got Griezmann, you've got Messi still there, Luis Suarez has gone. It's just all completely, I think, higgledy-piggledy is a word I would use.
Well, let's go back to what Messi's description was, shall we? Balancing things, juggling things, keeping things in the air. And when a hole opens, you try and close that hole. There isn't a structured plan. Because, for example, the structured plan this year was, let's get rid of certain players of a certain age. Well, they're trying to force Suarez out, and they will probably eventually succeed in that. They're trying to force Arturo Vidal, they've probably eventually succeed in that. And they've managed to get Ivan Rakitic to go to Sevilla. But some of the other changes they wanted to make, they haven't been able to yet, and may not be able to. And where's the money coming from? To sign, for example, Lautaro Martinez. Where is the reconstruction going to come from? And this is part of the problem, and you listen to Messi again this evening, and as I say, an extraordinary interview. He actually says, I don't know what will happen now. I don't know what the plan will be with the new manager, how these things will work. Nobody knows. Least of all Koeman, by the way, because of course he's working at the moment on a series of assumptions that he knows there is a chance that those assumptions won't be proven to be correct.
Sid, the scrutiny on Messi normally is incredible. It's like an A-list Hollywood star, basically. All the focus always on him. That is going to be ramped up even more now. Body language, there'll be lip-reading experts. Every single thing he does will be under the microscope.
Absolutely right. Everything. I do wonder, I mean, look, this is no more than speculative from my part, whether there will be some attempt to try and remove either the privileges, it depends on how you look at this, whether it's privileges or responsibility and pressure on him. For example, will he still be the captain? Because I think it would make some sense now, perhaps, for him not to be. What will be his role in the team? But you're right, every single thing he does will be looked at through the microscope to try and judge what it is he's thinking, what it is he's doing. And in a curious sort of way, we've done that for years, as you rightly say. And what makes his interview tonight so extraordinary is he's come out and said, you don't need to interpret him. He's been absolutely clear-cut. Now, will he continue to be for the rest of the season? Or will he now decide, OK, I've said my thing, now I just get on with it and play? But you're right, he will know that every little thing he does will be analysed and reanalysed, and it's going to put a huge amount of pressure on him. And by the way, and I think this is important, on absolutely everyone at the club.
Overall, Sid, just from someone who loves the sport as we do, as we followed it for all the years, it's kind of sad, really, isn't it?
Yeah, very sad. Absolutely sad. I've said this before on the show, Dan, and I'm going to repeat it now. The saddest thing, in a way, wasn't the departure of Leo Messi, the potential departure of Leo Messi, a 33-year-old player leaving a club. Although that was quite sad because we're talking about maybe the best player ever. We're talking about that possibility that the best player ever, or potentially the best player ever, stays at one club throughout his career. And the way that makes us kind of get back in touch with football at a time when it feels like that's very difficult to do. That was sad in itself. But what was sad wasn't so much that, but the very fact that he wanted to. You know, that Barcelona's situation was so bad that we're in a position where this player of this importance, of this symbolism, who's been at the club for 20 years, who joined the club as a 13-year-old, who's raised a family in Barcelona, who definitely, without any doubt, sees this as home. The very fact that he wanted to go was the terrible thing about it. And now he's staying. But that fact that he wanted to go has not changed. And so it's still a sad scenario. And I think it's going to be quite sad in a way, watching him play for Barcelona. Now, it would have been quite sad to watch him go. Watching him play in these conditions, kind of under duress, almost a prisoner, I don't know, it's a pretty pathetic way of ending, and lots of people have talked about this. Obviously, the great hope now is that this becomes some kind of Chicago Bulls, Michael Jordan-style last dance, you know, a realisation that this is the last one, let's go and make it absolutely brilliant. I really hope that happens, because at the moment the sense is of this being just a dreadful way for it to come to an end.
Thanks so much for watching ESPN on YouTube. And for more sports highlights and analysis, be sure to download the ESPN app. And for premium content and live streaming, subscribe to ESPN Plus.